there. April and Aiko guests to next year.
Hi.
Now, brain health is just as important as keeping your bodies healthy. So we're honored to be able to talk with Dr. Dustin Hammers, who is an associate professor of neurology at Indiana University, to be able to tell us more about this topic. So welcome, Dr. Hammers.
Yes, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, so just to kick things off, can you tell us about your work that you do at Indiana University?
I'm a clinical neuropsychologist, which is a bit of a 25 to 50 cent word, but I can explain it. I'm a psychologist who doesn't do therapy, but instead I look at people's memory and thinking skills and understand how they're thinking and ways to improve any kind of difficulties that people have. And so at Indiana University, or IU as I just tend to describe it, I am fortunate to be able to both work with patients in clinic, but also have a good bit of involvement with research as well. And so those patients may be individuals who are having some notable thinking difficulties, and they're referred by either their primary care doctor or a neurologist. They could also just be folks who are starting to notice a little bit of changes, but they're still doing everything perfectly fine, and they just want to be sure that everything's all right. And so I would work with those individuals as well. And so I see a wide range of folks in my clinical practice for a wide range of concerns. And then research, we'll probably chat a little bit about later, but I'm fortunate to do a lot of research with folks, particularly related to memory difficulties.
Awesome.
Awesome, yeah.
Very, very cool. So just moving into it. So what is going on with our brains as we age? You know, we're over 50, 58. My mom's 82. What's happening as we age with our brains?
I like to describe the changes that happen during the aging process for our brains as very similar and kind of parallel to what we see with our body. So we know as folks get older, there may be some changes to how quickly we can do things. The joke I often give is that your 100-meter dash time taken this day is probably not the same as it was when you were 18 or 16 years old.
Yeah,
our bodies change. Things aren't as efficient, aren't as fast as they previously were. And that is actually the same exact thing that happens for our brain.
Wow.
We know that there are some skills that get a little better as we get older. Those skills, like we think of the wise old sages, like Jeopardy memory, those we're able to collect more information. However, there are some other areas that aren't quite as strong as they were when we were younger. I made the mention of our physical body speed. Our mental processing speed is also something that's a little slower as we get older. It's just naturally occurring. And then our memory as well, when we get into 50s, 60s, definitely 70s, there are just some natural changes that happen. It doesn't necessarily make it a problem or a disease, but natural memory change is completely normal.
Yeah. Mom, you had a question about your brain, like shrink, what happens to your brain?
Well, physically, I know I've shrunk a couple of inches being in my 80s. So it got me to thinking, well, what about my poor little brain in here? Is it also, although the size of my head seems the same, I just wonder what's inside the brain and if it's also changing.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there are actually some changes going on. Again, much like the body, so we know for folks that as people age, their noses and earlobes tend to get a little bigger. They continue growing. Most of the rest of our body doesn't do that. And some areas, such as height, spinal compression, you get a little shorter.
Yeah.
For the brain, the connections within your brain itself. So there's within the brain, there are a number of different what we call lobes or different areas of the brain: the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe in the back. Those different brain structures will communicate with each other. And those communications occur by think of it as your computer wires. So there's connections of nerves going throughout the brain. And as we get older, those connections aren't quite as strong as they used to be. And so there's literally a thinning of the structures of your brains, of anyone's brain, because of the connections are changing and going down a little bit. And that doesn't necessarily assume or imply that there's anything wrong with that. We just know that as people get older, the volume, the size of their brain does go down a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so if you were to get an MRI, for example, or some kind of brain imaging, your radiologist who's looking at the structure of the brain, it'd be very important to that person. What is your age? Because they interpret how things are going based on someone's age. So you're absolutely right. There's a direct connection there.
Wow,
Wow.
that's interesting. Really
That is,
interesting.
yeah.
Now, we've had the pleasure of polling our Facebook group, members of our Facebook group, for questions about this for this interview. And so they came up with a bunch of topics that I think would be very interesting for all of us to learn about. And so one question came from Craig, who asked that, hey, since we're Destin X is focused on fitness and exercise, what's the impact of exercise on our brains?
It's a very strong impact, and it's a very good impact. And there are a host of different types of exercises we can do. And they all seem to have some slightly different relationships, but all of them are good as far as thinking skills.
Oh,
That's
can you go into a few of them?
Absolutely. So at the most basic level, when we exercise, that helps out our heart. That improves our cardiovascular functioning. It improves our pulmonary, our lung functioning as well. We get it when we are in better shape, we are able to move more blood throughout our body and get oxygen in and be able to move more oxygen to the brain. And so from a basic level, better exercise activities are going to improve your cardiovascular health, which is getting the nutrients that your brain needs, which has direct connections to our thinking skills.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So exercise is fantastic.
Yeah, and now also, we do a lot of balance work. We do a lot of opposite arm, opposite leg things.
Yeah.
And so can you talk about that and how
Coordination.
how that impacts the brain?
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a couple different ways that would impact as well. The first being that as individuals get older, so outside of brain health, just in terms of physical health, as individuals get older, frequently you'll see changes in weight, you'll see changes in strength. And for some individuals, there begins to be concerns about frailty or falls, just purely due to the individual's balance or the strength of their legs. And I've seen some studies that have suggested that of all the different activities we should be doing for folks who are in their 80s and 90s, leg strength training is probably the most important thing we should do to ensure that they don't fall and experience some rather large injuries like hip dislocation or a break. Because if that happens, then and someone becomes bedbound, just from a survival standpoint and an overall health standpoint, it's majorly impacting. And so at the most basic level, balance is phenomenal because balance keeps you upright and able to do the things that you want to do.
Right.
Good.
Right.
And then at the next level, if we're now starting to think about brain health related to that, we know that activities related to balance can actually be a little tricky because you're incorporating many different areas of your brain. Your vestibular system, which is the system inside your ears that controls your balance. That uses up a lot of bandwidth, to use a computer analogy, in terms of in your brain. And so activities to get and improve your balance can go a long way for many different areas of your overall health and your brain health.
Mm,
Awesome.
it's
All right,
awesome.
so let's keep focusing on balance and
That's
strength
right.
training, everybody.
Yeah.
Whew.
Uh-huh.
All right, so now Joyce is 73. She is going to be retiring soon, and she's already thinking about things outside of exercise
Mhm.
that can help her brain, like she's going to be volunteering, starting to learn another language.
Mm.
What kind of other activities are great outside of exercise for the brain?
Joyce, I don't know if you sit in on my feedback sessions with patients, but you literally just took the two examples, no, my primary examples that I give to patients. So we know that a very strong connection beyond physical exercise is mental stimulation in terms of being able to stay sharp as folks get older. And the examples that Joyce just gave actually literally happen to be my two suggestions of
Yeah.
volunteering. So, volunteering requires people to usually get out of their routine to engage in something.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you increase your opportunities for thinking of different things or just being engaged. You might actually be able to increase social engagement as well, which is another point that we can talk about a little later on. But so volunteering in an activity is my number one recommendation to
Yeah.
patients who are coming in and are doing pretty well and want to be sure that they stay sharp.
That's
The
awesome.
other piece that Joyce mentioned was learning another language. And in terms of brain creativity, the two areas that I think are the most rigorous as far as forcing creative thought are either learning another language or learning a musical instrument.
Yeah.
And because either of those or both of those really require a lot of mental power. There's learning, there's memory,
Mhm.
there's shifting you out of your comfort zone to learn something new. Those are both incredible pieces of activities that folks can do.
Awesome.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's actually not all because those are both rather high bars.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm just going to go learn a new language today.
Right.
Some things
Yeah,
are
right.
really daunting for some folks. You don't necessarily need to be as ambitious as that in order to still get some benefits for brain health.
That's right. What are your favorite things, Mom?
I do crossword, jigsaw puzzles,
Mhm.
crossword puzzles, knit, sew, yeah, read,
Absolutely.
read. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, those are all phenomenal suggestions. If I can critique very slightly, the lowest on that list of things that you said that I would probably comment on would actually be the reading, because I just had this conversation with a patient yesterday who was an avid reader. Reading is fantastic. However, it's possible to be very engaged when you're reading. It's also possible to be very passive and not really think of what's going on. And so, reading with mental thought about it or contemplation or processing, I think is fantastic. Reading for fun is fantastic. But reading, if someone is just kind of going through the motions, it's actually, it might not be as strong of a help as the person may be hoping for. So we really want you to be engaged and interactive with the information.
Yeah, good
Oh,
point.
that's really interesting.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
that's all.
So then let's move on to food and
Mhm.
eating. Um,
My favorite.
yeah. Now, Marsha asked this question. Are there any valid studies about diet and Alzheimer's disease, and what foods you recommend? To keep our brain function strong as we age.
This is an area that has had a lot of conflicting research, I
Hmm.
would say. Um, Feels like every day when I'm either at my computer or at the grocery store checkout line and kind of looking at the magazines,
Mhm.
uh, there is a new big finding that is either supportive or refuting the previous big finding. So it is very understandable for this to be somewhat of a confusing area for folks.
Right.
But the one area that has shown very consistent results is something called the Mediterranean diet.
Mm.
And some of your listeners may have heard of it before, others may not. But it is a diet that is high in vegetables. It's high in good fats like olive oil and fat from cheese. And so a lot of essentially, and fats from nuts and fruits and vegetables. Um, there is in the Mediterranean diet. There's certainly allowances for red wine, for example, and essentially we're talking about non-processed foods or limited processed foods. And again, there's the high bar of what can be done perfectly, and there's the bar of, well, if given the two options on this meal, if you choose the one, it's probably better for you. Much like the mental stimulation. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to completely overhaul your diet, but if trying to focus more on healthier vegetables, if it's meat based, very lean meat, more fish based than red meat per se, and healthy fats. Those have repeatedly been shown to have some benefits for individuals as they get older.
Again.
Very interesting. So, just thinking about like what you eat, and also we've heard a lot about vitamins and supplements. How does that factor into what we should be ingesting?
It's a great question, and I field this all the time in my clinic
Hmm.
because there is so much information out there in the literature about if you just take vitamin E or if you just take selenium,
Yeah.
or in the early 2000s it was ginkgo biloba. To date, we have not had any consistent results of any kind of vitamins or supplements that have been showing positive effects for cognition or Alzheimer's disease or anything like that. When we're talking about these rigid, strict control studies.
Mm.
Um, as a clinician, I would absolutely love to be able to recommend a particular vitamin to my patients to help out their thinking skills. But take vitamin E, for example. Some studies have suggested that vitamin E can improve thinking skills. Other studies have suggested that vitamin E doesn't have a benefit, of which neither of these are those really rigid, those really the high level randomized clinical trials,
Hmm.
which are smaller trials. At the same time, vitamin E is a supplement that in high doses, for some individuals, it can actually be carcinogenic or lead to higher rates of cancer. For other individuals, the same exact dose could lead to lower rates.
Wow.
Well,
It's very confusing. It's very conflicted information.
mm,
I don't have a very easy answer.
Hmm.
One is certainly if you're thinking about a supplement or a vitamin, I would talk with a doctor to make sure that what you're taking right now, it isn't going to lead to a medical cross reaction.
Yeah.
And the other fact is that regardless of what you're taking, generally speaking, if you can get that supplement or that nutrient from food in
yeah.
the way that it was intended to be consumed
Mhm.
versus a pill form, um, I would imagine, I know for a fact that for many circumstances, it's much better. There's probably some random exceptions to that. But
Right.
generally speaking, food based is much better than pill based.
Hmm. Go natural.
Right.
Yeah.
Go natural. Go natural. Another specific question Carol
Mhm.
had was relating to caffeine. A lot of
Mhm.
us love coffee.
Uh-huh.
So, what's the impact of caffeine on our brains in addition to keeping us awake?
You
Good or
can absolutely drink your coffee. It's not going to
bad?
have, in fact, there isn't any, again, there is not any consistent trend in the data whether it's helpful or harmful. Um, we know on a very short term basis, that first sip of coffee actually improves everyone's awareness and alertness. In fact, in my clinic, I also on occasion will see individuals with questions of adult attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I see a wide range of folks.
Okay.
And the reality is that anyone could benefit a little bit from a little bit of caffeine in terms of their thinking skills. But there's a small window where you benefit and then you can exceed that.
Yeah.
So, April, I don't know how much coffee you drink a day, but if you drink 4 pots in a day, if you think about what that does just to your alertness or your ability to focus because you're so potentially over caffeinated, that can certainly harm things. And so it's about balance. And for a lot of people, there's probably a pretty wide range between the first sip and the first pot that is perfectly fine and there's no major benefit or harm.
Right.
And so, yeah, you can certainly consume your caffeine.
Okay. Oh, that's good news. That's good news. Are you happy to hear that, Mom?
I'm here. I'm happy.
Well, actually, full disclosure, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do like tea, and I know green tea has caffeine. So
yeah, I will say there was just recently an article in the New England Journal of Medicine that was talking about caffeine consumption and either cholesterol. It was both cholesterol or cardiovascular effects. And now there are some suggestions that really high doses of caffeine, or a pot of coffee or 10 cups of tea a day, something like that, may have some cardiovascular effects that you want to think about. I'm not a cardiologist, so I can't speak to that specifically, but I just wanted to give that caveat. However, from a brain standpoint, we're not really concerned with people having their cup or two of coffee or tea a day.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So, how about the issue of stress? And that comes in many forms. What's the impact of that on our brains, and what can we do about that?
Stress is harmful in many different ways, and stress is also one of those factors that, when we think about the fact that stress can be harmful, that in and of itself can be stressful the next time we're stressed. Stress is just so complicating in terms of everything that we do. We've absolutely seen it for these past 3 years with the pandemic. In clinics, folks who just the daily stress that they experience can lead to some physical changes in the body. So when we're very stressed, our body releases a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is helpful in getting you up and running away from the tiger that is chasing you. If we think about the evolutionary fight or flight response. But on a day-to-day, we typically don't need those type of we don't have those experiences. And so the high levels of cortisol that people will experience with day-to-day stress can it actually literally leads to some changes in the brain. It leads to some changes in the body. But from an output standpoint, we know that it can impact your ability to pay attention and your ability to remember.
Well, that's fascinating. When you think about the chemical processes that go on, like you just mentioned, cortisol, and I mean, really, it's just you can see how it could impact that. Now, what can people do to manage their stress? Any thoughts on that?
I am a big advocate of meditation. I almost accidentally said medication, which I don't have anything. If one needs medication for anxiety or stress, then absolutely, whatever is necessary to benefit them. Again, talk with your doctor about that. But meditation is something that I actually engage in every morning. 15 minutes, my first 15 minutes when I get up, I try to do some deep breathing meditation. And so something along those lines. But again, it doesn't have to be 15 minutes every day. That might be daunting for folks.
Sure.
It could be sitting quietly for a few minutes and just thinking, or just thinking about your breath. It could be finding a quiet place in a noisy environment that you can get away for a couple minutes, just to try to center yourself a little bit. There's a wide range of things that folks can do to try to decrease their stress.
Yeah.
And the other, connecting back to a previous conversation, a phenomenal way to decrease stress is exercise.
Mm.
It's both enjoyable and it releases endorphins into the body, which naturally combat the cortisol.
That's awesome. And also, we do a lot of gentle stretching that
Mhm.
that I actually find are,
It's
that
relaxing.
yeah, right, yeah, that are
Yoga.
really very relaxing and influenced by yoga as well.
Yes,
Very, very.
absolutely. Yoga is phenomenal in terms of helping with the body mind connection.
Mhm. Anything else? We're coming to a close here. That you'd like to share about how we can keep our brains healthy and sharp?
I think the biggest piece, if you take anything away from this today, is that making mental and physical engagement functional and easy is important. Someone who comes up with a 22-point plan of all the different ways that they're going to improve their thinking skills by staying mentally sharp and stimulated, that can get overwhelming and they may not do any of
Right.
it. It's the basic analogy of if someone's not getting off, if someone is not getting off the couch from a physical standpoint,
Yeah.
should they first sign up for a 5K that'll force them to exercise? Or should they potentially just start by parking at the grocery store 3 rows further than they would have
Right.
and just get into the habit of walking a little bit more? And you can kind of build it from there.
Right.
And so the more we can integrate some of these mental stimulating activities into our day-to-day life,
Hmm.
we're going to do them more. It's just a natural tendency for human behavior. And so make it as functional and easy as you can to be able to do it, I think is a great way to start out doing some of these things.
That's great
That's it.
advice.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And
Very good.
to do, yeah, like you said, to do what you can, to try something different, different things, different activities. Like you said, just walking farther from
Yeah, that's a
the
good idea.
store to
Mhm.
get
Make it
some more
an effort.
exercise. Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
something additionally, I also talk with some in clinic. I'll have conversations with folks who are engaged in a lot of things after they retire, which is fantastic because it's completely normal when you retire to want to, you know what, I've been working hard my entire life. I'm just going to take a break.
Yeah.
Completely normal. I'm happy to give people a pass for a few weeks to maybe a couple months. But there's a very strong tendency that once we get past 2 or 3 months, if those people are still on the couch, that's a suggestion. They're probably going to stay on the couch.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
Yeah.
so at the same time, we don't want everyone's, now that you're retired and all your extracurriculars of mental stimulation and volunteering, and I'm trying to both learn a new language and learn a musical instrument. If that becomes depleting for people, then any of the possible benefits are completely undone and it just becomes a stressor. So it's important to know yourself and to know the balance of what you can do. Because again, all of the purpose of all these things is just to try to stay as sharp as you can and improve things.
Right.
And if you're
Right.
doing it so much that you're stressing yourself out,
Yeah. That's not good.
yeah,
Just doing the
absolutely.
opposite effect, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Great.
Very
All
good.
right. So now, are there any resources that that our friends can go to for more information on how to keep your brains healthy?
Certainly. Two great areas that, two great institutions that have strong websites
Mhm.
are both the National Institute of Health, so NIH has a great brain health program website, and the Alzheimer's Association has a phenomenal website there as well. And then additionally, um, the AARP is really a great resource for individuals. Last I checked, they had a brain game of the day, like a free brain game app that you can take part in, which is a great example of something that's mentally stimulating that you can do.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the last piece that I will mention is that I am currently was recently fortunate to be funded to be looking at some lifestyle changes and lifestyle interventions for folks with early onset Alzheimer's disease,
Mm.
which is a condition that is relatively rare. It's for individuals who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease before the age of 65. And what I'm going to be doing in this study is we at Indiana University have a group of individuals who've been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's
Mm.
disease. And at the moment, there are no treatments for individuals with this condition. And so I'm going to be incorporating. In fact, I'm incorporating some stretching exercises from a certain website here, as well as some cognitive training aspects from a particular site, a particular company that has some really good literature on it. It's called Brain HQ. And whether someone is interested in Brain HQ, for example, or Yes to Next videos,
Mhm.
or it is videos related to some other stretching website or a different cognitive training program.
Yeah.
These are types of examples of things that I feel strongly enough about that we're actually looking at this from a scientific standpoint to do one of these randomized clinical trials to be
Oh,
able to understand it better.
Oh, that's great.
that's super exciting, and
Yeah.
we're thrilled to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
Yeah,
with us
very
about
nice.
things
Very
we can do,
interesting.
yeah, to keep our brains healthy. And we look forward to hearing more about your exciting research. Now, when is it kicking off your research?
It is actually kicking off in the next few weeks.
Oh, wow.
We
Excellent.
are in the final stages of contracts
Mhm.
and getting institutional review board approval to ensure that everything is being conducted properly. And then we're very excited to be rolling everything out in a little bit, and would always be happy to chat more about it. And I just want to say I absolutely love the videos that the two of you put on. We first were connected. I reached out to you for the rest of the audience. I reached out as part of this study, but also my mom is 82, and I have her checking out Yes to Next and looking at the videos because I find that there's a wide range of engagements that are available, and it's just very accessible. So I am greatly honored to chat with you today and to be
Oh,
working
that's
with
so
you.
good.
And
Great.
I'm very impressed how you can take a topic like exercise, which can be daunting for folks, and make it feel approachable. So
Oh,
thank you.
well, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. That's
It,
really
it
sweet.
really warms our hearts, and
Yeah.
it's a true joy to be able to help your mom. So
Yeah, say hi to your
yes,
mom.
tell her to keep moving, and please tell her thank you so
Us
much.
kids have to stick together.
That's right. Anyway,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Dr. Hammers. We look forward to seeing you real soon.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Take care. Bye.
See you
You
soon.
too. Bye.